you putting on a show, yes, but really you're just showing that you're competent and you care about what you're doing as a board member, and you take your responsibility as a trustee. You don't take it lightly. You take it seriously, then overall your life is going to, the life of the community is going to be better, but your life as a board member is going to be better because the community has trust in you. When communities lose trust in their board, that's when things can start to go sideways with the owners right then.
Common Sense for Common Areas exists to help all 2 million HOA board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. If you're a board member, that's you. Stay with us weekly for actionable insights that minimize stress, avoid catastrophes, and protect your property values. This episode is sponsored by 3 businesses that care about volunteer board members: Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
Hi, I'm Robert Nordland of Association Reserves.
And I'm Julie Adamen of Adamen Inc. And this is Common Sense
for Common Areas. Well, this is episode number 8 with regular co-host Julie Adamen. And before we get started on today's topic, I want to encourage everyone to check out episode number 7, which is an absolutely fascinating discussion with prominent Community Association attorney Jim Slaughter, who is also a nationally renowned parliamentarian. And he guided us through some of the basics of running an orderly meeting. And that's the key there, the word orderly meeting. Great stuff based on Robert's time-tested rules of order. But back to today's episode. Last time we spoke with Julie, I felt like we left so many loose ends on the table, and that's exactly why she's a regular co-host. So following up on Jim Slaughter's procedural guidance for running effective and orderly meetings, today we'll continue talking about running effective board meetings. I look forward to hearing from Julie's years of experience to give us some insights and tools that you can begin applying at your next association meeting. So Julie, let's get going on the program. What's the board meeting challenge you tempted us with? Gone in 60 minutes?
Gone in 60 minutes. 60 minutes. So, this has always been a big topic anytime you go to any organization or every time I work with the board. One of the first questions I ask them is, how long are your board meetings? And then, of course, the stories come out. Well, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Well, I have to tell you, little aside, I have everyone beat. I went when I was a manager way back in the day, I went to a board meeting that lasted 2 days. Adjourn, come back. It was a horrible experience. And the only reason it was because there was an abject crowd, a crowd of abjectly angry people, and they were there, and the developer ran the association. He wanted to give everyone a voice. But for the manager, who at the time was 28 years old, it was me, that was very stressful, highly stressful. But there's no reason to do that kind of thing. And most board meetings typically last longer than they need to. And it's for some really basic reasons. I mean, Robert, you've sat in how many board meetings?
Plenty.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And do they ever go as quickly as you know they could as a professional?
No, they tell me how long it's going to take, and they have me in there because they want me to be delivering the bad news about how much the reserve funding needs to increase. And it always takes more time, and I'm always home later than I told my wife I'd be home. There's a dynamic, and I hope we get to it today. There's got to be some value in allowing the right amount of time for people to let off steam, but not too much, not allow it to go down into the drain.
Keep going on. Yes, because then it takes on a life of its own. But there is. So let's start with the basics for having a meeting that's run effectively, and it's short enough to make people not hate being board members, but long enough to allow discussion and appropriate discussion, not abusive discussion, nothing like that.
Also, the people in the audience, and so short enough to not have the board members hate it, but also short enough that the people in attendance have a good experience. They see that the association is in good hands. They see that, hey, I could do that. I could be a committee person. I could be on the board someday. It's not a distasteful thing. Yeah. So there's got to be so many ways that running an orderly board meeting is good for the association.
Oh, it's incredibly good, because I'll tell you, where do most homeowners see a board in action? At a meeting, right? And if the meetings are long, if there's a lot of negativity in the meetings, if one person controls everything and does all the talking and no one else gets to say anything, look, that is an unpleasant experience for the audience. Just, you're saying it's the homeowners. And who wants to be a part of that? Who wants to volunteer to sit in a 3-hour board meeting to listen to Bob pontificate or just meetings that are not well run and they're a lot of not just loose ends, but they don't follow their agenda or whatever it is. So yeah, that's if you want more board members, more committee members, run more effective meetings. It's a big prong in that.
And I wonder if there's another element also that you mentioned, avoid being unpleasant, but maybe there's the appearance of the association being in control, the association being in good hands. And so you don't open the door very wide for people to start to distrust and accuse and be disgruntled, because there's in every part of our life, there's something to complain about. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But we keep that mostly under our hat because it's part of life. And so I would imagine that if the board is running the place in a clean, orderly, open manner, then you might have some complaints here and there, but it's not worth really making a fuss about. Is that significant?
Exactly. Well, you're talking about transparency. That's, and as I think we talked about this previously in the last podcast, but in my opinion, there can't be enough transparency. There's some things that homeowners can't know that has to do with legal issues or personnel issues. That's something different. But 95 to 99% of what boards have to deal with can all be done at a board meeting, and they should be done at a board meeting, and being open and being able to and show the homeowners how things work. And actually, by having meetings well run, having them transparent and well noticed appropriately for whatever state you're in. If you are in the state of California, what's the notice for meetings now? 1 week?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Sorry,
to that
I can't. Because different states have different
exactly
things. But whatever it is, make sure it's everybody knows when the board meeting is. Either it's going out in email, or it's on your in-house TV, or it's up on the bulletin board somewhere. Whatever you're doing, make sure that people can come, and you want them to come. You want to make it. You want to be inviting, and a part of being inviting for a board meeting is to make sure it's well run, and that you stay. Well, let's start this way. What's the first thing we need to do? We need to stay on the agenda. The agenda is start on time and stay on the agenda. So typically the typical agenda is this, it was call to order, and there's obviously a quorum. So we've got the quorum, and next typically we approve the minutes of the meeting. Which brings me to this. Make sure if you want your board meetings to be gone in 60 minutes, as opposed to 2 hours, 3 hours, or God forbid more,
right?
Read your materials ahead of time as a board member. So don't be walking into the board meeting and just booting up your laptop where you're, if you got your board packet as an e-copy, you should be looking at it beforehand. If your board packet is hard copy, don't just be pulling it open right before you get in there, because there's a lot of things to do typically, and you don't want to be learning about it the same day or the same hour you're going to be making a decision on issues. So read your materials ahead of time. If you have questions, make sure and ask them. If you have a manager or management company, make sure and get your questions answered ahead of time. Or if you have to talk to another board member, maybe they know something you don't, you missed a last meeting, whatever it is, and get clarity before you go in there. That's paramount to keeping a board meeting down to an hour and 10 minutes. And that's usually where they bog down, is because somebody certainly did not read their packet. Yeah,
I would think that's almost elementary, but there's so many board members.
It is, but it's universal.
So,
it's elementary, but it's a universal problem, and it goes. You could go to a city council meeting and see the same thing. But
people they're doing a call to order. They're looking at the last month's notes, meeting minutes, and that someone is there reading the minutes, looking for errors because they have not looked at it yet.
Exactly.
Yes, we talked about the board meeting being a 1 hour thing, but that's not a board member responsibility time commitment. That's actually the show where things get done, the business meeting. There's prep time. There's knowing your role, asking questions. You do your prep, you ask your questions, what's clarification, so you have a clear understanding, and maybe you bounce some ideas off another board member.
Yes, another board member, or maybe your manager, whatever it is. So whatever you need whatever issue you need clarity on as a board member, try and get those answers ahead of time. Because I would venture to say that you can get almost all of them, if not all of those questions answered. There's that. So you got it ahead of time. And then we get bogged down after we typically do the minutes, we get bogged down in the financials. And so that's always something that takes people a long time to absorb.
If you're doing it, they're on the spot. If you're doing it, they're on the spot.
Yeah.
And maybe that takes some training. Maybe you need to sit down with the manager as a new board member. Help me understand this. Out of this page of numbers, what's important? Am I looking at this new number at the top right or this big number in the middle? Help me know so I can make decisions, because otherwise I'm a words person. I'm not a numbers person. Help me. And I bet the manager, the controller of the management company, the treasurer, another board member could just say, oh yeah, this is what I learned. I'm sorry no one has taught you this before.
Of course they do that. And in fact, all boards should have an orientation for new board members. I mean, it doesn't mean it has to be a big production, but the board itself, or a lot of management companies will do this now, is to have board member orientation. So they bring them in and they teach them those things. This is typically how the meetings run. This is your role. If you're the secretary, this is your role. If you're the treasurer, this is your role. Typically, sometimes these things go back and forth, but in general, as a secretary, your role is going to be to ensure the minutes of the meeting are taken and distributed appropriately. Now, you may not do that as the secretary, but it's your job to ensure that gets done, as there may be some other functional things to do. But so you should have that orientation. If your management company does it, please take advantage of it. And if they don't, I think you don't have a management company, maybe you're self-managed, the board should have an orientation for the new members, because you want to bring them into the process, new members, as quickly as possible. There's so much to do in an association. And like Robert alluded to this earlier, is that, when a lot of you got on the board, this will all sound familiar. You got on the board because you were told, oh, it's only like an hour a month at the meeting. Well, they don't tell you about all the hours that you put in other than that. And it's better to understand how things operate as opposed to learn on the fly when you already have this responsibility. And your time will be more well spent. But anyway, so the next thing, let's see, after we go through the financials, then there's the old business and new business. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was actually going to lead right into that, because there's some preparation that you can easily do and need to regularly do. And I'm thinking the ones when I was a board member, the things that surprised me. The things that surprised me was the new business, which is exactly, I think, where you're going next.
That's right where I was going,
where the manager says, now there's going to be an $8,000 plumbing bill. And I said, $8,000? What the heck is that for? I don't want to learn about that in the board meeting. I want to get a phone call, an email beforehand and say, hey, just to let you know, this is what this is. This is what it's for. Remember back unit number 13 last year. Get the backstory. And that's so you're not being confronted with surprises. Again, your theme, I think, is be there, ready to take action. And that means not being on your heels.
Yes. You have to be what's the term? People lean into it. If you're a board member, I mean, sometimes I know it's not a particularly pleasant experience. I've been a board member on 2 boards at one time. Now I'm just on 1 at the moment, but it's just on 1 at the moment. Yes. But the 2 actually was really, I would say it was entertaining, but it was enlightening. And I really enjoyed the experience. The other one was a rather larger association. But anyway, you've got your board packet, you've got your agenda, and you're looking at it. And there's something under new business on the agenda, and it's new things that you have no idea about and they're going to talk about, and you didn't know, you didn't pay attention, or you just didn't get the information perhaps from your manager or your management company, or you don't have a manager or management company and the board self-manages. Maybe the board member in charge of that hasn't talked to you. Pick up the phone and get the information you need. Because Robert's absolutely right. When you're, as a board member, you get blindsided by, it's typically the hardest one is to deal with a big financial expenditure that's coming up and you're like, whoa, I have to vote on this now and I didn't know anything about it.
Okay, we're preparing for a board meeting. And you want to have an open meeting. And everyone, what I hear is people are concerned about that. They hear a lot about that. And they're afraid about speaking to their neighbor, another board member, about what do you know? And isn't there a very clear difference between what's in a meeting and what's in a conversation? Aren't you free to get more information one person at a time?
Sure you are. Sure you're free to get information. What you're not free to do is depending on what state you reside in, what you're not free to do is hold an unofficial board meeting. You're not, actually some states don't care at all, but if you're in a state like California or probably Nevada, actually Nevada for sure, California, Florida, I think, Virginia probably. But anyway, is that you're not allowed to have a quorum of board members get together and decide anything in between meetings. You can't do that. I mean, even any kind of discussion. But if you're picking up the phone and talking to the board president, maybe, you're a board member, talking to the board president, hey, I see this coming up. What's the backstory on that? That's absolutely fine. That's conversation. That's you're getting information that you need to be an effective board member.
Right. So separating between what a meeting is and what a conversation is, and the common denominator is not condominium business. The common denominator is it a meeting or not? Because whether you're calling that person who's walking, or when they're walking outside your door and you say them and you say, hey, hello, Kim, how are you doing? And you see that Dodgers victory last night or whatever it is, and you end up talking about some association business, totally fine. You're not having a meeting. You're in conversation. Did you hear about this? Do you know about this?
Yeah.
It's another thing to say, hey, let's get another person or two and start to discuss. That's where it begins to
start to discuss and make decisions. Yeah.
That's the no-go.
In many places, that is absolutely verboten. You cannot do that. California is one of them. But having conversation about the association, I mean, the last board the other board that I sat on, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of landscaping issues and that type of thing. And the board president would give us a call or send us email and tell him what he's working on right now. So we would all have some idea of it, right? He was on site and very hands-on. We did have a management company, but he did a lot of work. And then we go to a meeting and all that same information is available to anyone. He was actually chair of the landscape committee as well. So he had his own report that he actually would give to the members in attendance as part of his landscape committee report. So, and that's basically what we were getting in between meetings. But anyway, one thing I do want to say about running really good meetings and making them shorter and keeping yourselves on track month to month. So I think what happens with a lot of associations is when the minutes are taken, but they're not taken very well, and people don't keep track of what was in new business, we didn't get to, and then what was in old business from month to month. Try and stay on top of that. So, for example, if under new business you have 3 painting bids, you're going to paint, building 12, whatever, and you got 3 bids in there, and the board either ran out of time, or the board just wasn't ready to make a decision on it, or they wanted a 4th bid, whatever reason,
or it wasn't apples to apples.
Apples to apples. So, whatever it is, they decide to table that decision to the following month. So that item that was in new business now moves to old business for the next month. And if you're in charge of making sure the minutes are correct, if any managers are out there listening, if that's you, back when I was managing, we always took the minutes, and now it's not so common. It's maybe 50-50. Anyway, that's how you keep your boards on track, and boards, that's how you keep yourselves on track. Well, we didn't decide it last month, and it didn't fall off the radar the next month. And even if you don't get to it the next month, you leave it on that old business until you get there and either make a decision on it or decide to strike it from the agenda, because you're not going to deal with it this year or next year, whatever it is. So that is really key to keeping yourselves on track month to month from what you're supposed to decide, and look orderly. I mean, again, everyone sees you at a board meeting, and if you're sitting there at a meeting going, oh, I don't know what happened to that item. I don't know. What did we do with that? That's why it's so, these are just small things to do to keep yourselves on track.
But those are the things, the telltales that confusion starts to minimize the trust that the homeowners have in the board and the board's leadership. And so it is, to a degree, putting on a show that we are capably in charge here. We are orderly, and you're going to put on your best face to the homeowners and do your level best to show them that we are taking good care of things. We are not lost. We are not confused. Yet we're not prepared to make that decision because they're using a different type of paint. That's not the right type of paint. So let's get that good third proposal, and we'll decide on it next month in an open meeting. Again, transparency, which you let out with. Boy,
it's everything. The transparency, everything.
Yeah, it gives so much confidence when the homeowners are there and they're seeing, now I understand.
Things are in pretty good hands. And when they see things are in good hands and they have confidence in the board's integrity, I will say, because actually the board's integrity is everything. But when they have confidence in the board and the board has shown integrity, it's transparent. Things may be going along great, and then all of a sudden some big thing happens, and let's just say we have to do a special assessment that's, maybe going to be painful for lots and lots of people. And as difficult as that's going to be, it's always going to be easier. No, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be easier if the general populace of the community has trust in the board and its judgment. And that's what you always want to project. And I want to say, you're not, you putting on a show, yes, but really you're just showing that you're competent. And it doesn't mean you have to know everything. I mean, no one knows everything, but it's showing that you're competent and you care about what you're doing as a board member, and you take your responsibility as a trustee. You don't take it lightly. In fact, it's not lightly. You are really in charge of all of these assets, financial and hard assets, on behalf of other people. And I think if we thought more about that as board members, as opposed to just, I'm going into a meeting and I hate doing this and I don't want to do this one more time,
Can we get done before a TV show or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's cocktail time, whatever it is. Exactly. You take it seriously, then overall, your life is going to, the life of the community is going to be better, but your life as a board member is going to be better because the community has trust in you. When communities lose trust in their board, that's, first, it's a ginormous red flag, obviously, but that's when things can start to go sideways with the owners right then.
Yeah. So it's not a show, but it is building a foundation of trust on the easy things, putting new sand underneath the tot lot or the cushioned, little minor things, getting the pool heater. Well, hopefully that's a minor thing. Some associations, that's a big thing.
That's a big thing, yeah.
Yeah, but the ongoing business. And so when you do have the big event, there's enough momentum and enough of a voting block majority that they say, oh yeah, our board's got this. I've seen them many times. It's not a big deal to go to a meeting, to see them. Our association is in good hands, all those kinds of things. And building up that political capital, is that another way to say it? So
absolutely. It's terrific political capital. That trust that they have in a board is the board's political capital to get things done as they need to, as opposed to the association in overall trying to hold back doing things because they don't trust you that you know what you're actually doing. And that's when all of a sudden you'll get a big dissident group who comes up with their torches and pitchforks at the annual meeting. And that's when life can turn very unpleasant.
Yeah, if you can build that political capital so that when you get more people at that special assessment meeting or the annual election meeting, there's enough people there who are comfortable, and I want to say the odd man stands out, that they are indeed minority opinions, and they don't start to turn the entire tide because they are just an outside voice. Now,
exactly right. That's very astute, Robert. That's true.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that a moment. The outside voice, the minority opinion. What have I heard? Every opinion is important, but not every opinion is equally weighted, something like that. You have a homeowner there who lives in the association, paid good hard money to live there, and just has a bee in their bonnet about something. It's important for that person to have an opportunity to express their displeasure. But then again, you don't want them to dominate a board meeting and turn everything sideways. So is that just the order of the meeting to allow them to have their say, and you respectfully acknowledge them and you move on?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're going to have to, and they have a right to their opinions. They may not be correct opinions. You may not agree with their opinion, but they have a right to it. And most communities have an open forum either before or after the meeting. I think in the state of Nevada, the open forum is within the meeting. I'm not quite sure. You'd have to look, if you're over in those other different states, you can certainly look it up. But most associations will have an open forum so people can ask. Now, if you have a big association or you have lots of people attending, you don't want the open forum to be 2 hours and the board meeting an hour and a half because no one's going to stay with it. So you really have to manage that. And you always have those 2 or 3 people who want to get up and filibuster. They want to talk for like 10 minutes. And a couple of things you can do. One is always tell them you're limited to 3 minutes, like a city council meeting, 3 or 5, depending on how many people. And now I've seen this done. It worked really well. You had 2 or 3 people at this large association that wanted to dominate everything. Well, one of the people who was one of those dominators, the board gave him a stopwatch, like a real stopwatch, not one on your phone, but it was a real, of course, this was back in the day before we'd had these phones, but a real stopwatch. And they put him in charge of timing everybody. Man, they were all done in 3 minutes because he wanted to be in charge. No, it worked really well. So there's some creative ways you can do it, but limit the conversation. And if it gets abusive, if the conversation is abusive or they're yelling or they won't shut up, you actually do have the ability to just stop and not call the meeting to, if this is before the meeting, let's just say that we either not call it to order if he's going to continue this way, or if you're already in a meeting and they're standing up and want to talk in a meeting, which I do not recommend allowing that to happen, except if you have to by law in your state. But only the board members should be talking at a meeting. I mean, homeowners shouldn't be, chiming up and asking a question about something.
Me
if they
too.
want to know, they can. Yeah, exactly. They can ask if they want to know. They can sit on the board or sit on a committee. Yeah. So, but that's when meetings could really go off the rails. Is if you allow input from the homeowners out there. That is, number one, they shouldn't do it. But also, especially if it's not constructive. I mean, if someone had just one thing to say and say, but remember this, or how about here's what I know, and they had some relevancy to it, maybe, but don't record that in the minutes. But for the board, you need to control that, because when meetings go off the rails like that, it's incumbent upon the board to bring it back in. Tell them they're not allowed to speak, or you can speak to us after the meeting, or only in the open forum at the beginning or the end of the meeting, whatever it is. So you got to bring them back. And that's not just for the chair of the meeting. I want to tell you all that if you're a board member, sometimes you have a chair that is either weak or just doesn't understand how things flow, and you might have a better idea. And let's just say the filibuster happens, within another board member, right? And so if they are going off the rails, as I always say, don't get lost in the weeds, because then you're way up in Crab Nebula and you're off the agenda. Stay on the agenda. But any board member can, point of order, Mr. Chair, Ms. Chair, point of order. Let's get back on the agenda. This is not an agenda item. Anyone can assist the chair in corralling that kind of thing. Even if it's a homeowner from the outside, point of order. Homeowners discussion takes place before or after the meeting. And so you can bring it back, because sometimes the chair, they feel like they're all alone out there, and sometimes they are. So anyone can do that. So you can all of you have some say in how your meeting operates as a board member. It's not necessarily, you don't have to wait for the chair, because if you see something's wrong and going off the rails, then point of order, let's get back where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. And we'll get back to the fundamental of transparency, order, timeliness. And what
knowledge.
I'm taking notes here, and I don't even have a board meeting coming up. But
are you on a board right now, Robert? Are you on a board?
Am I? No, I am not. Although
you had to think about that.
I had to think about that, because I am in an advisory position, many different places, but not officially on a board. What I hear you saying is know what you're trying to accomplish. Be respectful. If it's that same complaining homeowner, when you give them the microphone, say, "Hello, Mr. Jones. It's good to have you back again. Welcome." And have that respectful attitude. That can lower the blood pressure. That can lower the tension. That person gets to be heard. And maybe that person wants to read a poem, just wants to be heard. But the whole idea of setting the tone, building that political capital, this is how we do things here, and giving the general body of homeowners the vision that this is in control. The board's got things on my property, which I am mortgaged up to the eyeballs on, is in good hands. I think there's so much that you said it earlier, just scrambling, getting your documents, walking into the meeting. Am I prepared? Let's keep this to 1 hour. Being prepared and setting the tone. There's so much strategy in that has nothing to do with the business of the day. Would you agree to that?
Absolutely. There's tremendous strategy in it. And actually, but it's a real thing. I mean, when the board has, like we said, builds that trust, that people have confidence that you are a competent board and that you have their best interests and the community's best interests at heart, that actually sets the tone, not just for your meetings, but actually for the entire community. Because, we always used to say, and actually it's true, communities have personalities like dogs. There are the golden retriever, the really good communities, and then there's a pit bull, and then there's a little yappy dogs, and they all do. And that is largely rests on the shoulders of whatever board is in charge at that time. And so you want to be the competent German Shepherd. Not biting, but competent, look good. Right. Always have things as under control as possible and confident. You're confident in yourselves and you are trustworthy. And that is what will set the tone for your entire community. And it's an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah. That's a community that I would want to be involved in. I would feel very comfortable knowing all I know about the community association industry, with that kind of person in control, with that kind of board in control, I would be able to focus on other things. That would be just a wonderful thing.
Yep.
Well, Julie, I look at the time and it is time.
Is it all ready? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I told you I could talk forever on this.
Yeah, you could. And there's, again, lots of other places we can go on this. But I think we gave some great highlights, some tidbits, some ideas. It was a pleasure to see you last week in person. It's a pleasure to speak to you on the phone or here in a podcast. Now, to our audience, we hope you've learned something from our discussion that helps you bring common sense to your common areas. If you have a topic you'd like to have us address or a question you'd like us to answer, please call us at 805-203-3130 or email us at podcast@reservestudy.com. We look forward to having you join us for another great episode next week.
You've been listening to Common Sense for Common Areas. Thank you to each of you for your engagement and support. To continue the conversation, you can follow the social media links for Robert Nordland, Kevin Davis, and Julie Adamen in the show notes. If you like the show and would like to support us, you can do so in a number of ways. You can subscribe to Common Sense for Common Areas wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and please share it with another board member. You can do us a huge favor by going to iTunes and leaving us a 5-star rating and review. And you can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. You'll find links to the website and social media for Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services in the show notes. But the most important thing you can do is to engage in the conversation. You can email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or call our 24/7 voicemail line at 805-203-3130. This podcast was produced by Stokelight Video Production and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll see sales grow as you reach more customers with videos that inspire action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight. Finally, remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast, including host, co-host, and guests, do not constitute legal advice. We encourage our audience to consult with their own legal counsel before making important decisions.